Hello, everyone. We will go ahead and get started. I'll wait for our panelists to come online. Thank you for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn, hosted by California Association of Museums. Today's Lunch and Learn topic is Unionizing in Museums, Moving Beyond the Moment and Toward Building a Movement. So just a quick introduction. My name is Rochelle Hoffman. I'm CAM's program manager. I'm going to go over a couple housekeeping notes before we get started. Um, so there is live captioning available for this programming if you would like to view kind of transcripts as they're occurring. We are recording this webinar and this will be posted to CAM's YouTube page. You will get an email with connection instructions on how to view the recording when it's available. Let's see, I forgot to update the slide, but the chat will be open throughout the presentation. And the Q&A is also open. We'll have Q&A kind of portion at the end. Try to refrain from messaging the panelists directly since they might not be able to attend to the private chat while they're speaking. Let's see what more. Oh, just because of the nature of the topic as well, we want to make sure everybody feels comfortable in this space. We will not be recording during the kind of Q&A discussion portion of today's session. If you're having any technical issues, you can message the host or use a chat box. The email to reach our host is engagement@calmuseums.org. All right. And just a brief appreciative note to our sponsor, Balboa Park Online Collaborative. This Unions Focused Lunch and Learn webinar is sponsored by BPOC. They're a nonprofit consultancy that partners with museums, archives, cultural organizations, and nonprofits of all sizes to make mission-driven, cost-effective, and sustainable digital technology and strategy decisions. For more information, you can see their website at bpoc.org. All right, I'm going to introduce our panelists. We have Natalie, Linds, and Marie. I will let them do further introductions, but thank you all for joining us for today's Lunch and Learn.
Thanks. My name is Marie, she, her pronouns, and I am from the CalAcademy Workers United Union. And just a little bit of information about this panel talk. So as the title suggests, we're here to talk about unions. Lately, we've seen a wave of institutions unionizing, and it's really no surprise why. Museums started as the private collections of the wealthy, which in some ways still holds true. But today it takes approximately 87,000 museum workers to keep these institutions running, and honestly, probably more since a lot of us wear multiple hats. At the end of the day, museum workers, like all workers, deserve fair pay and a living wage, especially given the cost of living right now. Thanks to unions, staff can advocate for their wages, their working conditions, and more. So we have about 10 questions lined up covering why we unionized, the challenges that we faced, and lessons from bargaining, as well as the future of unions. And then, as Rochelle said, we'll open up the floor for a Q&A after. So I'll just have my fellow panelists introduce themselves before we get into our questions.
Hi, I'm Natalie Kramm. I'm also with CalAcademy Workers United. I think whenever we initially presented this panel, we didn't have a contract, but now we have a contract. So that's really exciting. And yeah, nice to meet you all. I use they, them pronouns. I don't know what I was supposed to say, but there it is.
You got it. You're good.
Hey y'all, I'm Linds. I'm with the Oakland Museum of California Workers United. We are bargaining our first contract right now, and we have finally gotten to economics. So we've made a little progress since we last saw y'all. And my pronouns are they, she.
So the first question we have for everybody is, what inspired you to become involved in union organizing? Does anyone want to go first?
Yeah, I mean, there's the obvious answer, which is that we would all love if our workplaces were a little bit more democratic. I think, especially as the world crumbles around us and like fascism is a threat to all of us, I think being able to have everyday democracy at work is like, it's really radical and really cool. So that that's cool, but also like I think unions have been at the forefront of every social movement worth fighting for, whether that's like immigration or um just really everything, racial justice, everything. Unions play a really pivotal role in that. So I wanted to kind of create that at work because museums have really specific issues when it comes to like equity that we don't really have a pathway to address unless you form a union. So that's was a big motivation for me, and I think it's only going to become more and more pertinent as time goes on.
Can we just get the next slide, please? Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I mean, for me, like I was on the CalAcademy organizing committee from the beginning. That was about 3.5 years ago. So it's been a long road to get here, to get a contract finally. But like I think that throughout that process of organizing, like I discovered my passion for like advocating for my colleagues, and I discovered that like I really do love my job and the institution and really care about my colleagues' well-being in the workplace. But like for a lot of us, it just didn't feel sustainable for us to stay at our jobs, even if, you know, we like we're really caring about our roles here. It just, you know, it just didn't feel like a long like that we could stay here long term. Um, but I think like for me too, it really goes beyond like the economics of the wages and benefits and paid time off, et cetera. And it's like about our members coming together to have a say in our working conditions and how the museum is managed. Like Nat said, like it's a democratic process and we didn't have that before. And seeing this like really big power shift is really, really incredible and like really transformative. Um, and I feel like, you know, the silos that were previously there have really come down, and like there's much more camaraderie among our staff, and we've really like come together to utilize our collective power to make positive and lasting changes here.
Yeah, I would say everything Nat and Marie said is totally spot on. Um, I really enjoy the work that I do, but there are not a lot of um, opportunities for growth or, you know, um, the pay would not really keep up with my experience. So I think a lot of folks that have joined our movement want to keep working at our institution. It holds a really special place in our community. And I really love the people that I work with. Um, it was hard to see people leaving just simply because their benefits wouldn't cover their family or um, there were no opportunities to progress in their career. Um, and in the midst of, strategic planning and all kinds of other institutional things, um, a lot of decisions were being made about us, but without us. So for us, a union was the best way forward to make sure that our voices would be heard, and we could really learn from each other, and make sure that those decisions were being made equitably and with our input um, seriously considered versus just filling out a Google form and then not hearing much back about it.
Yeah, can we get the next slide, please? Um, so I guess, yeah, how do unions benefit museum professionals and address the unique museum workplace challenges? And what changes have you seen in your workplace since unionizing?
I can start that one off. Like I said, OMCA is a really special place to work. Um, our museum represents a lot of progressive values, but working in a nonprofit does have its limits. There's only so much you can do within the confines of the nonprofit space. Um, And I feel like sometimes the values that we are marketing ourselves on don't always extend to the lived reality of the folks working at the museum. Um, OMCA does a lot to uplift community stories, including workers' movements, and a lot of social justice movements in the Bay Area and throughout California. Um, and so it was tough to see the museum have this real focus on social impact and then see so many of my fellow workers struggling to see the benefits of the work that we're doing for our community. Like we can't make rent, we can't afford better health care, and we just can't, some folks can't even afford to live near the museum. So I think trying to wrestle with like what our museum represents versus how we are living has been really tough. But having our union has really helped us come together as a community, and talk more openly about different things that are affecting us, including, like everything that's happening right now with ICE raids and um, witnessing genocide. So it has helped us come together in a way that felt really hard before because we're just stuck in our little job silos.
Yeah, I totally hear that, and I totally agree. I think we were in a very similar position, like before we unionized and before we won our contract in May. Our lowest paid workers here were paid $21 an hour. And so people, have to work multiple jobs or have to live in substandard housing. We all know how San Francisco housing is extremely expensive. Or, we heard from members that they were food insecure and relying on our vending machines for meals. So in the first 14 months of our contract, we won $25 an hour minimum wage. So those folks are going to see a 20% wage increase over the next 14 months, which was a huge win and a very hard fought win in bargaining. And like I mentioned before, just like the camaraderie amongst staff has been like a really big change. But I also think that now that we're like a baby union with our first contract and our contract is being implemented, like we're seeing a really big power shift. And like that is to me like really interesting to witness, like how that's all unfolding. Because like we've said, like we didn't have a say in anything that affected us before. Like decisions were made top down and we didn't have a say in those decisions. And now to see that like we have a say, we have a seat at the table has been really, really transformative. And I think that like, it's a muscle that people have to learn to flex. Like we're giving the people, our colleagues, the tools to better their working conditions, and that's a hard muscle for a lot of people to flex and to learn how to use it. And I'm really excited to like see people actually like use that muscle and to stand up and say like actually like if I'm being pulled into a disciplinary meeting, I have the right to representation. Like it's just that by itself is like a huge shift because people would get pulled into meetings of that nature all the time and not have any support. So I'm just like really excited to see how things change here and how things become more democratic, like as our contract implementation unfolds.
Yeah, with our contract, we obviously we focused on economics, and because that's one of the easiest ways to improve somebody's life. But we also thought a lot about what we call common good proposals that don't just benefit like us and our coworkers, but really benefit our whole community and like have rippling effects outward. So some of those are, I mean, our museum's like 170 years old, so that comes with 170 plus years of baggage, and white supremacy and racism and sexism and every ism that humans have created, is part of the fabric of museums in general, but our museum definitely as a science museum. And so some of those like things that we really focused on were we could see kind of the writing on the wall that our rights are being taken away. And so we put all that language that, you know, we take for granted about discrimination, that's in, you know, California state law and federal law. And we put that in our contract and said, it doesn't matter what happens to the rest of the world if these protections get drawn back, we've got them. We're not going back. At least our coworkers, we know we can protect each other by including all of that anti-discrimination language in the letter of our contract. But we also did a lot of other things like DEI initiatives, which of course it wasn't new to our institution after the murder of George Floyd and just this like nationwide reckoning with white supremacy. We had brought in third-party contractors that didn't really know the museum, and we had a lot. I think everything kind of stayed more in the realm of discourse than what can we do together. And so now that we have this article in our contract about enshrining DAI initiatives and educational, worker-led education on the legacy, not just of white supremacy in the world around us, but in museums and in the science field. So we can all talk about that and not just talk about it, but do something about it. And that's another thing that I think my colleagues were kind of alluding to is like, there's this whole world that opens up when you are unionized, you have protected speech. So I work a lot with a group called 10 to 1 Members for Palestine. I probably couldn't have put, you know, political posters up at work before, but now because I have protected union speech, I'm able to put up whatever I want. And if somebody wants to tell me to take it down, they're going to have to talk to my union rep about it, you know? So that's an incredible thing that I think maybe we just in, you know, society today, it feels kind of scary to talk about some of this stuff at work. You don't know whose feathers you're going to ruffle, but with a contract and with union representation, you can really talk about the connections that our museum has to the things that are going on in the world today. So I thought that was really cool and just one of those things that maybe you don't always think of about why should I start a union? You know, maybe my pay's okay, but there's so many things that a union provides to you that are priceless.
Yeah, definitely. Next slide, please. So yeah, what strategies have proven successful in rallying support among museum staff and community allies?
Well, we've got Gordo Taqueria here, which has fed us on many, many lunch breaks. They've put up our posters. We went out in the community and we met with other people that had started a union around the park, like the Tartine Union and lots of Starbucks unions around. So we worked with them. We also worked with our across the street neighbors. The De Young has a union. All of us are with SEIU, a lot of us anyway, a lot of the museums in the area. And so we actually started an advocacy group called Museum Workers Committee. Actually, that's a working title. I don't know where we landed on it, but join us.
The Museum Workers Alliance now.
Alliance.
Yes.
Now we're the alliance. Okay. And we're basically working together to basically create a pathway for this. So you don't have to like figure it out and hack your own trail yourself. We can create language that we used in our contract and share it out with other people so they can say, oh, well, I like this part from the CalAcademy's contract, and I like this from the Exploratorium's contract, and oh, we should do this from the Asian Art Museum's contract. So we're creating lots of resources and supporting each other as museum workers, but also just our and communities as a whole, I think, has been really, really effective organizing.
Yeah, I would say seeing CalACademy's success on social media has been really inspiring to us at OMCAWU. Um, I think what has been really cool is getting to know other folks who work at museums and getting to know my own coworkers. We did a social media campaign similar to CalACademy's where we just did like a little employee highlight. Um, and had folks send in photos of themselves and why they wanted to have a union at our workplace. Um, and just seeing folks come together in solidarity has been so empowering and inspiring. It's really great to know that you're not alone in some of the struggles that you're facing. Not even at your own museum, but all around the Bay, like museum workers are having the same issues with getting fair pay and getting good health benefits, finding ways to grow their career or explore different options within the museum field. And I feel like trying to make that information available to the community that we serve, as well as our little museum community, has really helped to unsilo a lot of the roles and the teams that we work on, um, and help folks feel safer about talking candidly about their working conditions, or things they're experiencing in their roles with the public or with museum management. Um, so social media has been a huge help, and tapping into this network of museum professionals has also just been really enlightening for us.
I just want to give props to Nat because Nat did a lot of our social media on Instagram. So good job with the social media, Nat. It's incredible and it's a lot of work. Um, yeah, I mean, I think like the first step and really like the main thing is just like talk to your coworkers and like that was a challenge for us in the beginning because our bargaining unit is about 350 people and it was a lot of work to like reach all those people and have conversations with them, one-on-one or in small groups, not only about like what wasn't working for them, but like what they like about their jobs and the institution and what they wanted to enshrine, like the decolonial education workshops, for example. Like we heard from a lot of people that, that was something that they really wanted to continue doing. And so we made sure to like write an article about that. Or we have a gender inclusivity article. And that was really important to a lot of people. And I think, just learning from your colleagues, not only about like their work, but about what they like about it and what they don't is really, really critical. Um, and then like in terms of like the bargaining process, like the bargaining team had a lot of conversations internally about if we wanted to do open bargaining or not. And we went back and forth on it. And then kind of like, because we had a really steep learning curve, like we'd never bargained a union contract before. We didn't know like the right way to do it. And I don't think there's a right way to do it. I think, each bargaining team decides like what is going to work best for them in that moment. But we did decide to like make all of our proposals and all of management's counters public. So like we just had a Google Drive that we shared out with our members and on our website so that people could see like in real time what was happening at the bargaining table. So like, we would make a proposal and then 20 minutes later management would come out and it would just be all crossed out in red. And so people could like see that happening in real time, which I think was really powerful because us just saying to people repeatedly at like lunches or meetings, like, oh, they rejected everything, like it's not really as powerful as seeing like the actual language completely crossed out. And I think that gave people like a really good insight into like how much of a battle it was to get this contract done. Yeah, the next slide, please. Um, so yeah, just like what was the biggest obstacle you faced and how did you overcome it either through like bargaining or through organizing or something else?
I can start. As I said, we're developing and bargaining our first contract. And for a lot of folks in our union, this is their first time being in a union. So like Marie said, there's definitely a steep learning curve to figuring out how to word proposals and how to communicate them in a meeting, especially when you're in a room with people that you might not usually interact with on your day-to-day work. Um, and really like learning how to work with your union rep was like a whole other thing for us. Um, but I do feel like this has been a steep learning curve both for our bargaining team and for our management team. And there, I think there are ways that we connect as people that don't always translate well in the bargaining room. So I feel like a lot of times, legalese and semantics really gets in the way of seeing each other as human and making progress on these proposals. Um, I understand, like, there are a lot of legal implications to things that we're asking for. Um, but it can be frustrating sometimes when you as an employee are trying to communicate your basic needs and you're just met with resistance the whole way. Um, so I think what started us off on a good foot was that the museum did voluntarily recognize our union. So we didn't have to go through like a messy election or anything. Um, and at the same time, like there's still a strong desire by the workers to hold the museum accountable to um, their goals around equity and anti-racism that are in our strategic plan and a huge part of our branding. So I think what has been hard and also good for our workplace community is just holding some space for that growth period um, and remembering that as workers, we have more in common with each other than we do with the people that get to make all the decisions um, and really trying to galvanize a movement.
Totally agree. I think when we started out, everyone just felt really disconnected and alienated from each other. I think that's like, especially like post-pandemic, or well, not post-pandemic, but you know what I mean. Um, Post-lockdown, everyone was feeling really alienated, and that divide, especially between like our public floor staff who had been out every day in the masses, and then the administrative staff who had come back into the office like at a much later date. There's a big divide. And I mean, I probably don't have to tell you all this, but without public floor staff, everything grinds to a halt. They are universally the most underpaid and undervalued employees at a museum workplace. So this was like a crash course in building community and class consciousness. And like Lynn said, like convincing, I think we had maybe 150 unique job titles and 350 people in our unit, convincing all these people that we all have a lot more in common with each other. And we've got scientists, educators, custodians, grad student workers, collections, like we have so many different jobs in our museum, but we all have more in common than we do with the people that are making the decisions about how this place should function. Um, and yeah, and then just start listening to each other and sharing those ideas. And that's where like I think the magic really happens, because you might not see it, you might not see something one way, but then I think Marie alluded to the vending machine thing, which is like such a long saga I won't even get into. But we realized that so many of our frontline staff depend on these vending machines for lunch, for their meals. And there was an issue with it, and the employer was not taking care of it. And so we had to actually organize people around just actually having food available so they could eat and have sustenance. And so there's something that seems like, oh, it's just a vending machine to some people. That's my lunch. Like that's something that can be so political, especially food. So that was one of those things that I think really hardship brings people together, commiserating and like talking about all the things that are messed up. Like a lot of times challenges are also opportunities, I guess is the best way to like put it.
Yeah, I certainly agree with that. Like like Nat said, like, during the COVID lockdowns, like our biologists were still here taking care of over 60,000 animals every day. Our custodial staff were still here every day cleaning. Our public floor staff, like a lot of them got laid off when we were closed. And, we went through like a really brutal round of layoffs and furloughs when we shut down from COVID. I think it was like over 70% of our staff was laid off or furloughed. And that was really, really challenging for us. And for those of us who were left, like we just had to go into like survival mode of just like, okay, like all these people are gone and like we still have to do the work. How are we going to get this done? And I think that that was a really big catalyst for us to start discussing union organizing. Um, and yeah, like we unfortunately did not get voluntarily recognized by our management, so they forced us to an election. And that bought management time to run a really strong anti-union campaign. They created like an internal anti-union website that you could only view if you were a staff member. They held like anti-union meetings. Like, our executive director kept asking, like, is a union really the best thing for us? Like repeatedly. Um, they like created anti-union flyers and put them all over the building. And like they really, really tried to scare our staff into voting no. Um, and like we fought back with like our worker power. Like we held lunches, we had one-on-one conversations, we text banked, like we like worked really hard to dispel the myths that management was spreading at that time. And we won our union with like a 77% voter turnout and 77% voting yes. And we won our first contract in May. It's been about 2 months, and we had like an over 85% yes vote for our first union contract. So like it's been 3.5 years in the making, and it's been really challenging at a lot of times, but like we are just continuing to like organize and fight back against, all of these myths about how unions are really bad for the workplace. And there are still people here who don't think that like a union is the best thing for them and aren't really active. And, so it's still like an ongoing um, issue that we're working on, is like trying to, still show people like this is going to protect you. It's not just about your wages, but it's about worker protection. You're no longer an at-will employee. So like you have protection now. If management tries to unjustly fire you, like that's now illegal because we have a union contract. So just like this, I think we still have like work to do, but I'm confident that we can reach those people, we can get it done. Um, so yeah, I guess like talking a little bit more about contract bargaining, like Nat and I have said like we've finished bargaining our first contract. And but I'm curious, like Linds, like where are you all in the process? I think you said a little bit earlier that you're starting to work on economics, and yeah, like just what is like that process been like so far?
Yeah, we've submitted the vast majority of all of our proposals. I think we probably have like a few economic placeholders still that we're working out. Um, but one big challenge that we've had is that we still have not defined our bargaining unit. And so that's causing like a huge delay in moving forward. We're still figuring that out with management. It's been a year long plus journey. Um, yeah. So honestly, like doing all of this, like developing the contract on volunteer time after work is really exhausting. Um, I feel really thankful that the museum has agreed to pay us for our bargaining hours when we're actually at the table. But there's so much work and brain power that goes into just developing these proposals. talking with our coworkers about them outside of our work time, and making sure that this is the best contract for all of us, and will touch the most people, not just the folks who are sitting at the table, or more active in the union, but really trying to uplift folks who don't have the bandwidth to be there, um, and making sure that they still feel like they're a part of our community. Um, yeah, it's a lot of work. It's definitely a labor of love. Um, so
Yeah, I 100% agree. It was the same thing for us. Like our bargaining team was 9 people, so we representing each division with 2 people from guest experience because that's like our biggest division. Um, and so we were paid when we were at the table negotiating, but everything else, writing the proposals, talking to people about the proposals, getting feedback, writing the proposals again, like that was all on our free time. Like it's a huge, huge labor of love and a huge time and energy commitment. And I know by the end, like there were days at the end where like we were in bargaining for 12 hours straight. Like we were losing our minds in this conference room. Like, and we had a mediator come in at the end who like helped us, helped both sides like come to an agreement and get the contract done. But it was a really intense process. And like I honestly don't think anything prepared me for like how intense and just like mind numbing all of that could be. Like also like I'm not a numbers person, so like figuring out like the healthcare stuff especially was like a really steep learning curve, and I probably still don't really understand it. Um, but I know that management's now paying for more of our healthcare, so that's great. But yeah, I think that like, it was definitely like really challenging towards the end, and just we all felt really, really burned out.
I'm thinking back on like the last 20 months of my life, and I think the moments that like filled my cup the most were our solidarity breaks, which you can see 3 different examples of some solidarity breaks. And it was, if you don't know, we would all take our lunch or 15-minute break all at the same time, go out on the museum floor, make some noise, bring some signs, let the public know what's going on here, that we deserve a fair contract and they're not bargaining in good faith or whatever the issue was. So one of the big issues that I think our first solidarity break is back in May, June of last year. The Academy came to us. They said, look, we don't have any money. We got to lay off a bunch of people. We said, that's not happening. No. And so then we went back and forth. We fought. And then we ultimately came to a deal about a voluntary severance package that was going to be offered to people. And it was, we got people a much better deal than they would have gotten if we didn't have a union. So that was already a plus. It didn't feel like a win at the time. That's another thing. If you're wanting to do this, a lot of your wins probably won't feel like wins, which it's not fun. It's not fun. But in the end, about 40 of our coworkers took with them a cumulative 400 years of institutional knowledge and service and experience with them. 40 people, coworkers, took that voluntary severance package. So we hosted this huge solidarity break out in the front lobby by our T-Rex, and we wrote notes to each other and our departing colleagues, like just talking about all the things we learned from them and how their impact is going to outlast. There was this beautiful analogy that I'm totally going to butcher, but the light of the stars that we see, many of them have died out, millions of years on, but their light lives on. And just like those people's contributions lives on through their work and through all of us as coworkers and the lessons we've learned from them. So that was like so beautiful and so heartbreaking and so sad. Um, but it was restored. It reminded me why we're doing this, what we're fighting for. So sometimes support looks like celebrating. You know, there was another one where we brought a petition. That was a lot more joyous. We brought a petition to the board meeting and we said, knock, 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 here's our petition. Like, this is what we need. We need a fair contract now. So it can look like both. It can look like grieving together and supporting each other and just being there and listening and commiserating. And it can also look like celebrating and speaking truth to power. So I think there's a lot of ways to do it. And you get a lot of perspective when you're out of it. Like, if you ask me this question in February when we initially did this panel, I probably had a different answer. I probably said, I don't know, I was probably more pessimistic. But when you look back at these things, you realize a lot of the most difficult moments are the learning opportunities, how you can, you know, crunch all this data in your brain and like apply it to the future. So, you know, next time anybody tries some layoffs, I think they got another thing coming for sure.
Yeah, I definitely feel like the looking back and like having a different perspective now is really true. Like now that we're out of bargaining and our contract is in place, like I'm sure I had a different answer to this question back in February too, but like I think something that's been like really amazing for me is just like how grateful I am and for the rest of the bargaining team and to like work alongside colleagues who are just like compassionate, not only about like their workplace, but also, you know, for everyone else on the team. Like I think that we really like bonded together really quickly. And, you know, even now that we're out of bargaining, like if someone's having like a bad day at work or like has something going on, like put the bat signal out in the group chat and like people will literally like run to your desk and be like, how can I help you? What do you need? Do you need to go for a walk? Do you need to do you need to like punch something? Do you need to lie on the floor? Like, and so just knowing that like I have a group of people here who like care not only about like my workplace well-being, but like my holistic well-being has been like the biggest honor of my life. And like I wouldn't want to do this work with literally anyone else. And if I keep going, I'll start crying. So I'll stop.
Yeah, I think what has been really nice is just getting to know people at work a lot better, and having opportunities to socialize with them. Like, I don't know, I am in the gallery all the time, but I hardly get to see our prep staff because I'm in a more public-facing position and they work behind the scenes. So really getting to know like all the amazing talent we have working behind the scenes, um, having opportunities to learn from each other, when we're developing some of these proposals, getting to hear some really cool, radical dreams for what the museum could be, and what this field could look like for folks moving forward, um, has really like just like blown up my worldview, which is really cool. Um, and getting to hear, you know, like some folks, um, people just come from all different kinds of backgrounds working in a museum. And it's like a bunch of different baby companies working together to promote whatever ideas the museum has. And getting to understand folks coming into this field from different places, um, or even just like different workspaces. Like we had like a dreaming session and someone said we should have more hammocks. Or, you know, more collective lunch times and things like that. Um, it's been really fun getting to know folks and learning how to stand in solidarity with each other.
So lastly, what do you see as the future for union organizing in museums?
I think bargaining for the climate, we all know the climate catastrophe is upon us. So I think looking at those extreme temperatures and wildfire smoke, all of those hazards that are going to become more and more prevalent, and doing that before you think it's necessary because it's going to be a lot sooner than we think. And working with other industries outside of the museum world. um, on those things.
Yeah, I think I'm going in the opposite direction, but getting to know other folks at different institutions around the Bay has been really cool. Um, I feel like we have a really strong cohort of unions, and it's been really inspiring to see folks leaning on each other, when we're seeing layoffs at other institutions, or even just trying to learn more about how we can scale wages, to be more equitable among folks. Um, it's really cool to be able to learn from folks that do the same work that we do, um, and see a lot more connectivity, even just like across the Bay, like East Bay and San Francisco has been really great.
I definitely agree with everything you just said. Like seeing the camaraderie among museum staff at different institutions through the Museum Workers Alliance has been really, really cool. And like, yeah, totally. Like learning from each other, like learning like what their job descriptions say and what the pay scales are, so that we can all work towards comparable compensation across museums in the Bay Area. And I'm really I'm really interested in the idea of like trying to collectively bargain a contract together in the future. I think that that would be like a really powerful and amazing thing that could happen. Um, so like our contract is set to expire on April 30th, 2028, so that we can participate in the general strike that's been called for on May 1st, 2028. So I'm hoping that like a lot of our sibling institutions across the Bay Area can participate in that with us, because I think that's going to be like incredibly powerful and really fun. So yeah, I think that there's like, there's so many opportunities for us to like connect and all work together.
If you're sitting in on this panel or you know other folks, who are interested in this topic, you can reach us at our social medias for our different unions. Marie and Nat are at CalAcademy and I'm at OMCAWU. One of our pals was not able to join us today, but they are in the Exploratoriums Union. So if you have questions, feel free to email us, or just DM us on social media. Um, we, you know, we all live and breathe these unions outside of our work time. So we will see it and we'll connect you with the right person if you have questions. I actually don't remember a lot about these resources that we put together.
I don't really remember either, but I think that these are just great articles to just like learn more about, museum workers and unions. And I definitely feel like some of these were really important when we first started too.
We will, when we put up the YouTube recording, we'll put these resources as clickable links in the description of the YouTube recording for folks who want to access them later, since they're maybe a little inaccessible in this current format. Yeah, all right. And then let's just pop our last slide up in here really quick. CAM has a couple upcoming programs. We have some of our Centering Equity workshops that are approaching in August. These are really, really great programs. Please check out the website, calmuseums.org, to just investigate and learn a little bit more. And please save the date for CAM's 2026 annual conference. We'll be back in Los Angeles. Again, this Lunch and Learn program was a panel at this year's conference back in February. Our Lunch and Learn programming are the highlights from the recently past conferences. So if you want to see things in person, yeah, consider attending the conference. We have a lot of ways to get involved: volunteer, scholarship, speaker, etc. Yeah, you can reach out to me if you have any questions about the conference itself. My email address is programs@calmuseums.org.